Women bond instantly after this happens. Complete YouTube script, 40 paragraphs. 1. There is one specific moment that makes a woman feel so deeply connected to a man that she starts thinking about him even when she doesn't want to. It's not about looks. It's not about money. It's not about saying the perfect thing at the perfect time. It's a single psychological trigger that happens beneath the surface of every conversation. And once you understand it, you'll never approach a woman the same way again. 2. Most men spend years trying to figure out why some guys seem to effortlessly create deep connections with women while they struggle to get past surface-level small talk. They try better opening lines. They try dressing better. They read dating tips that contradict each other. And nothing seems to stick. The reason nothing sticks is because they're solving the wrong problem. And today, we're going to solve the right one. 3. Welcome to the channel, where we talk about real human psychology, real connection, and what actually works in relationships between men and women. If this is your first time here, subscribe now because what we cover here is different. No manipulation tactics, no games. Just the truth about human behavior that most people never get taught. Stay until the end because the most important part of this video is saved for the last few paragraphs, and it's the piece that ties everything together. The science of female bonding. Before we get into what actually triggers instant bonding in women, you need to understand something about how the female brain processes connection differently than the male brain. Women bond through emotional safety first, not attraction, not physical chemistry, not impressive achievements. Emotional safety is the foundation that everything else is built on. Without it, nothing you do will create a lasting bond, no matter how perfect everything else seems. 5. Neuroscience tells us that women release oxytocin, the bonding hormone, in response to specific emotional experiences that are very different from what triggers oxytocin in men. For men, oxytocin is often released through physical touch and sexual intimacy. For women, it's released through feeling genuinely understood, feeling emotionally safe, and feeling like the person they're with truly sees them as an individual rather than as a role they're filling. This difference is at the root of almost every miscommunication between men and women in relationships. 6. The moment that triggers instant bonding in women is what psychologists call a vulnerability echo, and it's something that almost no man does naturally or intentionally. A vulnerability echo happens when a woman shares something real about herself, a fear, an insecurity, a dream, a wound, and instead of the man trying to fix it, minimize it, or one-up it with his own story, he simply reflects it back with complete understanding and zero judgment. In that moment, something in her brain registers. This person is safe, and safety is where bonding is born. 7. Before we go further, drop a comment right now. Have you ever had a conversation with a woman where something shifted and suddenly the energy between you completely changed? Where it went from surface level to something much deeper in a matter of minutes? Tell me what happened. Those experiences are exactly what we're talking about today, and your story might help someone else reading the comments understand this better than any explanation I can give. Why 97% of men get this wrong? 8. The reason 97% of men don't know about this bonding trigger is because the way most men are raised teaches them to do the exact opposite of what creates emotional safety for women. Men are taught to have answers, to be strong, to fix problems, to be impressive, to lead with achievements and confidence and capability. And those things are not bad. But when applied incorrectly in the early stages of connection with a woman, they create distance instead of closeness because they signal that you're performing rather than connecting. 9. When a woman shares something vulnerable and a man immediately jumps into solution mode, Here's what you should do. That's not a big deal. I went through something much harder. She doesn't feel helped, she feels dismissed. And dismissed is the exact opposite of the emotional state that leads to bonding. The man thinks he's being strong and useful. The woman experiences it as him not being able to handle her reality. Two completely different interpretations of the exact same moment. 10. There's another common mistake men make that blocks bonding before it even has a chance to begin. And it's one that even attractive, successful, socially confident men make constantly. It's the mistake of leading every interaction with the goal of impressing, rather than the goal of understanding. When your internal agenda in a conversation is, how do I make her see me as impressive? Everything you say carries that energy, and women can feel it. Not consciously necessarily, but in the way you make her feel about herself when she's around you. 11. The men who create instant, deep bonds with women aren't necessarily the most attractive, or the most successful, or the most articulate. They're the men who make women feel the most interesting, the most seen, and the most comfortable being exactly who they are without editing or performing. That quality, the ability to make someone feel genuinely seen, is rarer than talent, rarer than looks, and more attractive than almost anything else a man can offer. And it's completely learnable. 12. Here's a question that I want you to answer honestly in the comments. When you're talking to a woman you're interested in, what percentage of your mental energy is focused on her versus focused on how you're coming across to her? Be honest. Most men, if they're truthful, will admit that a significant portion of their attention is on themselves, on managing their impression. That awareness alone, if you let it in, can start changing how you show up in every conversation you have from today forward. The 4 moments that create instant bonds. 13. There are 4 specific types of moments that trigger the bonding response in women. 4 situations where, if you respond in the right way, something shifts permanently in how she sees you and feels about you. These aren't techniques to memorize and deploy strategically. They're principles to understand so deeply that they change how you naturally show up. There's a difference between performing understanding and actually understanding, and women can feel that difference immediately. 14. The first moment is what I call the unguarded share. This is when a woman tells you something she doesn't usually tell people, something slightly vulnerable, something that carries a small risk of judgment. It might not seem dramatic. She might say it almost casually, but she's testing the emotional temperature of the space you've created. If you respond with genuine curiosity and zero judgment, if you lean in rather than pulling back, you pass the test without even knowing there was a test. And passing it opens a door that most men never even know exists. 15. The second moment is silence. Specifically, a silence where she's processing something emotional, and instead of filling it with noise or a joke or a change of subject, you simply stay present in it with her. Most men are deeply uncomfortable with emotional silence and immediately try to break it, which breaks the connection forming in that silence simultaneously. The man who can sit in stillness while a woman feels something without needing to fix or redirect it is extraordinarily rare, and rare things are inherently valuable. 16. The third moment is when she contradicts herself and you don't call it out. Women, like all humans, are complex, and sometimes their feelings don't follow a straight logical line. If she says one thing and then says something that doesn't perfectly align with it, The man who lets that live without turning it into a debate or a gotcha moment creates an environment where she feels safe enough to be fully human. The man who immediately points out the contradiction wins the logical argument and loses the emotional connection every single time. 17. The fourth moment, and this one is the most powerful of all four, is when you remember something small. Not her birthday, not the big things everyone remembers, the small things. The name of her childhood dog she mentioned in passing 3 weeks ago. The project at work she was nervous about. The restaurant she said she'd always wanted to try. When you remember the small details, you communicate something that no grand gesture can communicate as effectively. You communicate that she was worth paying attention to, even when there was nothing to gain from it. 18. The fourth moment, remembering small details, is something almost every woman I've ever spoken to mentions when asked what made her fall deeply for someone. It wasn't the expensive dates or the impressive resume. It was the moment he referenced something small she'd mentioned, and she realized he'd actually been listening. Has that ever happened to you, either as the person who remembered or the person who was remembered? Share it in the comments. And share this video with a man in your life who needs to understand this, because this is the kind of information that changes relationships. The psychology behind the bond. To understand why these 4 moments work so powerfully, you need to understand what women are actually looking for beneath the surface of every interaction. And it's not what most dating advice tells you. Women are not primarily looking for a provider, though stability matters. They're not primarily looking for physical perfection, though attraction matters. What they're fundamentally looking for, what every human being is fundamentally looking for, is to be known. Truly, completely, without editing, without performing. Known. 20. The reason being known is so powerful is because most people spend their entire lives feeling fundamentally misunderstood, even by the people closest to them. Most conversations are 2 people waiting for their turn to talk, rather than 2 people genuinely trying to understand each other. Most relationships are built on the version of each person that they present, rather than the version that actually exists underneath. So when a man creates an environment where a woman feels genuinely known, not flattered, not impressed upon, but actually known, the contrast with every other interaction she's had is so stark that the bonding is almost instantaneous. 21. There's a concept in psychology called mirroring that explains part of why the vulnerability echo works so effectively. When we feel truly understood by another person, our nervous system shifts from a state of mild vigilance, which is the default state most people carry in social interactions, to a state of genuine relaxation and openness. In that relaxed state, the brain releases the same neurochemicals associated with trust, pleasure, and connection. You're not just creating an emotional experience, you're literally changing her brain chemistry through the quality of your presence and attention. 22. Understanding this also explains why physical attraction alone is never enough to create a lasting bond with a high-quality woman. Physical attraction can create initial interest. It opens the door, but it cannot keep a woman emotionally invested once she realizes that the person behind the attractive exterior doesn't have the emotional depth to make her feel genuinely seen and known. Conversely, a man who isn't initially a woman's physical type can become devastatingly attractive to her once she experiences the depth of being truly understood by him. This is not theory. Every woman reading this comment section knows exactly what I'm talking about. 23. Women watching this video, I want to hear from you directly. Is what I'm describing accurate to your own experience? Has there been a moment where a man did something that seemed small but completely changed how you felt about him? And men, does this change how you see some of your past interactions with women? The comment section is a space for real conversation today. Let's use it. What to do and what to never do. 24. Now let's get practical, because understanding the psychology is only useful if it translates into actual behavior change. There are 5 things you should do consistently that will create the conditions for instant bonding, and 5 things you should never do if you want a woman to feel genuinely connected to you. These aren't rules to memorize, they're principles to internalize until they become natural. Do this first. Ask questions that go one level deeper than the surface. When she answers a question, don't immediately jump to your next prepared question. Follow the thread of what she just said and go deeper into it. What was that like for you? How did that change how you see things? What do you think that says about you? Questions that invite reflection communicate genuine interest more powerfully than any compliment or impressive story you could tell about yourself. Do this second. Share something real about yourself before you ask her to. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the price of admission to genuine connection. When you share something honest about your own fears, your own uncertainties, your own struggles, without oversharing or making it a therapy session, you give her permission to be real in return. You set the emotional tone of the interaction, and the emotional tone you set determines the depth of connection that's possible between you. 27. Do this third. Be fully present in a world that has made full presence extraordinarily rare. Put the phone away, not on the table face down, but actually away. Make eye contact that communicates genuine interest rather than performance. Let what she says actually land before you respond to it. In a world where the average attention span has been reduced to seconds by social media, a man who gives his complete, undivided attention to a woman is immediately and powerfully differentiated from every other man in her experience. 28. Do this fourth. Celebrate what makes her different rather than trying to find common ground on everything. Most men think that bonding happens through similarity. I like that too. I feel the same way. We have so much in common. But genuine bonding often happens at the point of difference, when you find something about her perspective or her experience that is completely foreign to yours, and you respond with genuine curiosity rather than trying to relate it to yourself. "I've never thought about it that way. Tell me more," is one of the most bonding things a man can say. 29. Do this fifth. And this is the one that separates the men who create deep connections from the ones who create pleasant interactions that go nowhere. Follow up. A few days after a meaningful conversation, reference something specific she said. Not to impress her with your memory, but because it was genuinely interesting to you and you've been thinking about it. That follow-up communicates more about your interest and your character than almost anything that happened during the original conversation itself. 30. Of these 5 things, going deeper with questions, sharing vulnerability first, being fully present, celebrating what makes her different, and following up, which one do you think you're weakest at right now? Be honest with yourself and write it in the comments. Awareness is always the first step. And if this video is giving you something real, share it, because the men who need this most are often the ones least likely to find it on their own. What never to do. Things you should never do, because knowing what destroys bonding is just as important as knowing what creates it. The first is never compete with her emotions. When she shares something difficult she's feeling, Never respond with your own difficult feeling as if it's a competition for who has it harder. That's nothing. Let me tell you what I'm dealing with is one of the fastest ways to communicate that you're not a safe space for her inner world. And an unsafe space never creates a bond. 32. Never use her vulnerabilities as conversational ammunition later. If she tells you something personal in a moment of openness and you reference it later in a way that feels like a weapon, even lightly, even as a joke, the trust that was being built collapses instantly and completely. Women have long memories for the moments when their openness was used against them, and they have zero tolerance for a repeat performance. Trust, once broken in this specific way, almost never fully rebuilds. 33. Never perform strength by minimizing her problems. It's not that bad. You're overthinking it. Just don't let it affect you. These responses feel strong and rational to the man saying them. They feel dismissive and cold to the woman receiving them. Strength in the context of emotional connection is not the absence of emotion. It's the capacity to be present with someone else's emotion without being destabilized by it. That's the strength women actually find deeply attractive. Never rush the connection. One of the most common mistakes men make when they feel chemistry forming is they accelerate. They push for more intimacy, more commitment, more definition faster than the natural pace of connection allows. Genuine bonding cannot be forced or accelerated without breaking something in the process. The men who create the deepest connections with women are the men who are comfortable enough in themselves to let the connection develop at the pace it naturally wants to develop. Patience in this context is not passivity, it's confidence. Never make the conversation primarily about you, even when you're sharing about yourself. There's a difference between sharing yourself as a way of opening connection and talking about yourself as a way of managing how you're perceived. Women feel that difference in real time, even when they can't articulate exactly what it is. The internal question to ask yourself in any conversation is, am I sharing this to connect, or am I sharing this to impress? The honest answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know about why your conversations go the way they go. 36. Of the 5 things to never do, competing with her emotions, weaponizing her vulnerabilities, minimizing her problems, rushing the connection, or making it about you, which one have you been guilty of most often? This isn't about shame. It's about honest self-assessment, because you cannot change a pattern you haven't clearly identified yet. Write it in the comments. The men who do the honest work in the comments section are the ones who are going to see real change in their relationships. 37. Here's the deeper truth that everything in this video has been building toward. The truth that makes all the specific behaviors make sense at a level beyond just tactics and techniques. Women don't bond with men who are perfect. They bond with men who are real. The vulnerability echo, the remembered details, the full presence, the questions that go deeper. All of these work not because they're impressive techniques, but because they communicate one fundamental thing. I am genuinely interested in who you actually are, not in who you can be for me. The 97% of men who don't know about this bonding trigger aren't failing because they're bad people or because they don't care about women. They're failing because nobody ever taught them that connection is built through receptivity as much as it's built through action. The cultural script given to men tells them to pursue, to impress, to achieve, to perform. And all of those things have their place. But the moment that actually changes the game, The moment that creates the bond that makes a woman think about you when you're not there is the moment you stop performing and start genuinely receiving who she is. This is ultimately not just about romantic relationships. It's about becoming a man who understands human connection at a level that makes every relationship in your life richer, deeper, and more meaningful. The skills that make a woman bond instantly with you are the same skills that make your friendships deeper, your professional relationships more effective, and your relationship with yourself more honest. Learning to be genuinely present for another person is one of the highest things a human being can develop, and it starts with a single decision to care more about understanding than about being understood. 40. The moment women bond instantly is the moment they feel completely safe being completely themselves with you. No editing, no performing, no wondering if they're too much or not enough. That moment doesn't happen by accident. It happens when a man has done the internal work to be genuinely present, genuinely curious, and genuinely safe. That man is rare. That man is remembered. That man creates connections that last. Subscribe to this channel because this is the conversation we have here every single week. Real psychology, real connection, and the truth about what actually works between men and women. Share this video with a man who needs it, and drop a comment telling me what shifted for you today. Because the best part of making these videos is reading what lands. See you in the next one. Copyright script, all rights reserved.